Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Mikkel Thorpe, and this is the Expat Money Show. Today, we're going to be doing another expat news, and I am joined by my co-host today, Marc Clair. Marc, how are you?
Mikhail, I'm great. I'm excited to be back in the newsroom. It's been a while.
It's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of really interesting stories I'm looking forward to discussing with you. Before we jump into that, I want to mention to everybody that we've got a whole host of new trips and tours coming up in 2025. We actually announced these a couple of weeks ago at the Wealth, Freedom, and Passport Conference live here in Panama City, which was amazing, by the way. If you guys were not here, I don't know what's going on or what you were doing, but you certainly missed out. We had hundreds of people in attendance. It was a very, very full weekend, and the response was phenomenal. So one of the biggest announcements, as I said, was 3 new trips for the expat money community in 2025. So we are going to be doing a Brazil trip. It's actually northeastern Brazil. We're going to be going first to the Amazon on a cruise for a couple of days in the Amazon, which is going to be fantastic. It's been on my bucket list forever. I've been to Brazil 1,001 times, but never the Amazon. Then we will be flying as a group to Fortaleza. We're going to see about chartering our own plane because I expect the group to be sizable. We might have to get our own plane. And then we're going to be in Fortaleza for a couple of nights and then up and down the coastline in Brazil. So that's going to be amazing. Then a few months after that, we're going to be doing another Paraguay trip. We just released the video from the Paraguay trip. If you guys go to our YouTube channel and search for the Paraguay, you'll be able to see that. Video turned out amazing. I was super, super impressed. The demand for Paraguay has been huge. So we're going to be doing another trip for that in September. And then at the end of the year, we're going to do for our very first time a Colombia trip. And we're going to be doing Medellin, and we're going to go out to La Frontera, where we're doing a land project and timber project at the edge of Colombia. We're going to be seeing some hotels. We're going to be looking at immigration and taxes and everything in Colombia. So it's going to be a really, really big year. Marc, are you as pumped about the trips as I am? Are you excited about these ones?
I am super pumped, especially mentioning Medellin there. It's one of my favorite cities I've ever been to. It is just a place you've just got to feel it to believe it, I would say. Not even seeing it, feeling it to believe it. So I'm super excited about that. I know that's a country that people bring up all the time. And then the first Brazil tour. I mean, we've been talking about Brazil for so long here. I know you've been there a bunch of times. I have not been there yet, but we have a lot of staff in Brazil. So that's one that I know everyone is getting pumped about.
Absolutely. So I am pulling it up right now. If you go to expatmoney.com/tours, it's going to take you to the page. You can learn more about all of those trips, as well as another trip here to Panama coming up. There's going to be all of the information on that page. So go to expatmoney.com/tours. So on that note, Marc, let's jump into the news, my friend.
All right. Well, Mikhail, it's really hard to start a news roundup this week without starting with the word tariff. So why don't we just dive right in? It was recently Liberation Day. I'm not sure if you got the alerts to your phone, but it was Liberation Day in the United States where President Trump announced worldwide tariffs. I'm just going to set you loose. Take it whichever way you want.
Well, it's pretty interesting because when they use the word tariffs, I don't think they are using the definition of what I would use as tariffs, especially when he has this chart on this reciprocal agreement of tariffs. And he's saying these countries, these are their tariffs, but he's actually conflating tariffs and trade deficits. And then they're basically taking the trade deficit, dividing it in half and saying that this is going to be the new rate. Like it's pretty weird math how they came to any of these types of things. And just because you have a trade deficit, that's because they're providing value and they're shipping in goods which you don't produce locally or that can be produced at a better price. That doesn't mean that there is a tariff. The tariff is a tax on goods imported from that country. So these are two really weird and different things. But when you started looking at it and some of the amounts for some of these random countries, some of them were like 90% tariffs on it because of this trade deficit. And you're like, well, how is that going to help anybody? At the end of the day, what anybody needs to take, especially Americans, from this announcement is that the prices are going to go up through and through across the board. Your cost of living will go up. Now, is your salary going to go up? Are you going to earn more money? Maybe, depending how good of a negotiator you are. I mean, I would probably be having a conversation with your boss, or if you own your own business, with your clients, explaining, because prices are going to go up. There is no question about it. Middle class is going to get squeezed. Things are going to get more difficult. So for me, I'm very happy to be in a country that has very low taxation and very low tariffs on these types of things and a low cost of living. I think
Panama
it
was
is a
not
lot
on the
more
naughty
attractive.
list, I guess, huh?
I think probably not. I didn't go through every single country in the world. I kind of looked at some of the outliers, and it was like random things for Bangladesh and stuff like that. And you're like, okay, that's kind of random and weird. But if you only read the headlines, it appears in one thing, but when you actually do any digging, it's something completely different. I think that's no surprise to anyone who does their own research and education. But yeah.
I think there's no doubt there's some fuzzy math involved here, and I don't think that necessarily matters from Trump's point of view, or he's really looking at this from the persuasion of look at this chart and expecting that most people won't do what you and I might do and really dig into the weeds of this thing and what all the online economists will also do. I'm curious just your overall thoughts based on how you've seen Trump operate. I know we talked about him in relation to the canal and what he was really doing there with all his sort of blustering. How much of this tariff plan do you think is truly Trump trying to reshape the economy in one way, shape, or form through the bringing manufacturing back, whatever it may be? Which, as you said, regardless of the what one's opinions on that, it will result in rising prices on many things, undoubtedly. Or how much do you think if this is almost a worldwide threat for some sort of larger types of negotiations, or perhaps it's a mix of some kind?
Well, he's definitely using it as a negotiation tactic, especially with neighboring countries, with Canada and Mexico and things like that. I think he wants people or other nations to capitulate to his demands. I don't think he really intends on having these be, in place for the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years. I think that this is, let's beat him up and then, renegotiate things. But I do see that he is bringing everything into, which we've discussed multiple times, into the U.S. sphere of influence and trying to bring everything more in a protectionist type of environment in borders that he controls, which I understand and makes sense. I'm not sure it's going to go the way that he wants it to. I'm sure most people do not understand it by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, we have to watch and see what's playing out. I mean, the first 100 days here has been quite the whirlwind with Trump. And, you're always jumping from one foot to the next to try to understand what's going on.
It's certainly a risky move politically, especially when, like you said, most people on either side of these analyses don't really understand the ins and outs of this stuff. In fact, most people don't really understand the ins and outs of what Trump is trying to do with each of these countries individually. So there is certainly a large picture play here. But he, whatever the short-term damage may be, falling stock market, rising prices, more inflation, he seems to be prepared to weather that politically, or willing to for some amount of time, with the idea that it will turn things around in some way, shape, or form. But here in the U.S., I mean, as soon as an election cycle finishes, we're already kind of in the next one, and we're already kind of gearing up for the midterm election cycle. And it's going to be interesting to see if this really does cause an economic hit in the short term, how deep that hit is, and if people will see the light at the end of the tunnel when these elections come around. But this is, I'm getting into the weeds of U.S. politics and now, which I know isn't necessarily your favorite thing to do.
Not my favorite by any means, which I think we're also going to cover another topic, which I have very little interest in today, which is Canadian politics. But, I have to stay abreast of these types of things for my work, whether I like it or not.
Sure. And I think the big lesson to come out of this is that regardless of anyone's individual thoughts about the efficacy of tariffs or Trump's intentions or whatever, the point is one man came out on a podium with a chart and it sent markets into a tizzy. It wasn't even new bills passed, new laws passed yet. It's really just one man's decisions. And it really does display, if you're relying on all of your investments in any one market or on the whims of any one country, I mean, you're at major risk. And this really does is one of the major reasons people do build offshore plan Bs, do buy international real estate, do move gold offshore and this sort of thing. Because if you have all your money in this market, you really are just betting on whatever Trump or the next president or whoever decides to do at any given moment.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up because you're 100% right, because that's really the question that you, me, and everyone listening today really needs to answer. Is all of these plans, does this negate the need for a plan B, or does it encourage us to facilitate these and move forwards with these types of plans? And I think it's a resounding yes. We still need a plan B, and actually we need a plan B even more. It shows the fragility of the markets, and that if all of your investments are in one place and it is in something which can be manipulated, then that's really not where you should have the bulk of your wealth. We should be putting it in tangible assets out of the reach of a lot of these administrations, where it's not affected by a chart up on a podium. Like you need a better investment strategy than that.
Darn Skippy. Now, moving into our next subject, I know you don't love getting into the weeds on U.S. politics, but I think what you really don't love getting into the weeds on even more, I'm really going to put you through the ringer today, is Canadian politics, the land you emanated from originally. And there is, by the way, we can't really just pass this headline. You almost blink and you miss it, but there's a new prime minister in Canada. And if you don't recognize the name, his name is Marc Carney. It's because he was really not much of a public figure. Which just makes it all the more interesting that this guy is just suddenly the prime minister. This was done very much in a backroom deal. He is a very connected banker type, but really he's just waltzing right in, and we're going to have another election again. He immediately called snap elections, really, because it seems if you're calling snap elections, from my point of view, it's because you really got to get this vote out there before people figure out anything about who the hell you are.
Yes, it is true. I was born and raised in Canada. I left a very, very long time ago. I really despise Canadian politics and Canadian politicians because there's so much virtue signaling in these types of things, and there's so many pieces of the puzzle where they're just so hypocritical and it's just so dirty. But they have this veneer of trying to save the world and save the planet and save LGBTQRS, like whatever it is at this point, like it's just so over the top that the whole political system in Canada just makes me want to vomit blood. So I'm absolutely repulsed by all of them. Now, as to the actual story, yes, the Castro regime is out in Canada, and now we've got the Carneys in. You mentioned that he comes from a banking background, not just banking. We're not talking about retail or domestic banking. We're talking
Right.
about central banking. Two of the worst two words to ever be joined together in human history, and deep connections to the WEF and a lot of these globalist organizations. So I think that this is really, really scary. With Justin Castro and the cronies, we thought this was as bad as it could get, and then it's like be careful, what you say, like don't jinx it. And then we got Carney in here, and it's like, wow, like I didn't even know that was possible. Now with snap elections coming up, and we'll see what happens. But career politician on the other side, even if he says he comes from a conservative basis, I don't think that there is a conservative basis or a right-leaning or a pro-business basis in Canada whatsoever.
No, and I mean he does have this opponent who is he's kind of the he's part of the conservative movement in Canada. This Pierre, I will never pronounce his name right, so I apologize. But this Pierre Poilievre, I'm going to go with. But he is he's a lower taxes kind of guy. A low, he says all the right conservative things. But Canada is the kind of place, at least from my very vague understanding of Canadian politics, where even the most quote unquote conservative Canadian is much like in England. The most conservative British politician is completely in favor of fully socialized medicine because that's the baseline of politics in England. Just as the baseline in Canada is essentially progressive politics. So even the most quote unquote conservative politician is going to have this incredibly progressive, high tax, all of this stuff baseline. Even when he says lower taxes, he's talking about moving them nowhere near what either you or I would consider lower taxes.
100%. And I mean, when you add to that he's a career politician, that he's been in the political machine for his entire adult life, I don't think that this is, the next Trump by any stretch of the imagination. Would I like him to go in there and slash taxes and deregulate and all of these things? Absolutely. Fantastic. Do I believe it's going to happen? No, I think he's going to pander to a certain type of demographic who wants these types of things. And then he's going to go in and it's going to be business as usual. And then years will go by and we'll fall for it again, and someone else will come in and take his place. I don't think that this is going to be the savior of Canada. I think Canada is going into the dumpster, and I don't think that there's really anything we can do about it. I mean, my suggestion is get out while you still can.
So Canadians should not just be sitting around on the edge of their couch waiting for the results of this election. It's time to act yesterday.
100%.
All right, Mikkel. Well, we're going to return to another story that came up last time, the ongoing saga, you might say, of the Panama Canal ever since President Trump since before President Trump even came into office. He's been talking about the canal. And the latest saga, the last we left off, they pretty much agreed that there was an agreement that CK Hutchinson, the Hong Kong-based company that controls a couple of the ports of the canal, was going to sell its assets. But then it turned out, well, who are they selling them to? It turns out it was going to be BlackRock. Well, since then, there's actually actually been an intervention. And we've learned a lot more about this, and there's a lot more to learn. We could probably do 20 or 30 hours of research on this very specific subject and not get all the fine details. But the short of it is, it does seem the Chinese government, in some way, shape, or form, did put a stop to this deal. So at this point, it's kind of up in the air what's going to happen with all this. But what are your thoughts on what we've seen thus far?
Yes, we're seeing some reports that they've kiboshed the deal. I don't think that it is as simple as that. I don't think that they just get to wave a magic wand and cancel it. I think that there are fiduciary responsibility to other shareholders. From my understanding, this is a publicly traded company, and there are other shareholders, not just the Hong Kong family. So there's a lot that's going to go into this. I don't think that Trump is just going to take this sitting down, or, he's going to roll over on any of these types of things. I expect it to come back out. There's more to meets the eye, and, we will continue to watch and report on this as it unfolds. We haven't really seen a large mainstream media or political comments from the U.S. side now that this deal is being challenged or influenced by the CPP to kibosh it. But we'll be watching it daily as this unfolds.
I heard a very interesting theory the other day. I want to say it was our friend Tom Luongo. It was definitely a conversation involving him. Just don't remember exactly who said this, but one theory being that with BlackRock supposedly coming in to take over these ports, a theory is that while Trump does want to have more control of the canal and more influence in Panama, he didn't actually like the idea of BlackRock being the ones to control it. And perhaps he does seem to have a good relationship with Xi Jinping. I know I pronounced that wrong, and perhaps pulled some strings to say, all right, maybe you put a kibosh on this end of the deal, because I don't really want BlackRock doing that. That's full speculation, full conspiracy theory, but it's one of these things I just like to think that would be at least a cool, interesting little side storyline.
I like that one very much. I think that's a very interesting thought, because, we wrote an email at expatmoney.com, which was like, okay, China out, BlackRock in, like, question mark, like, and it was another one of those, be careful what you wish for. Everybody gets all up in their arms in the air on China suddenly controlling or supposedly controlling the canal. And it's like, well, they have nothing to do with the management of the canal. They have a port on each side, but there's many ports here that are controlled by different organizations or institutions. So it wasn't like they had anything to do with the actual management. And they've been there since 1997. There's never been any problems with it. But BlackRock, like, that's a pretty evil organization. Like, I think, look at their track record and what they're doing. They're basically building up all infrastructure projects around the world. Do we really want a monopoly on large infrastructure projects with one company where we have no idea what's going on behind closed doors with them? Like, I'd be more nervous about them than this Hong Kong company who's been in place for 30 years, nearly 30 years, and has a good track record through all of it. So, devil that you know, better than the devil you don't. So
indeed, it does seem either way, regardless of any behind the scenes machinations, that it does seem BlackRock is kind of out, which, I guess we got to be happy about that either way, right?
Well, I went to a family office meeting here in Panama a couple of days ago. I was invited, and it was a family office when I got invited because I run a small family office for my wealth. But then the other guests that were there were like the head of private banking at this bank, the head of private banking or VIP banking at that one. So it was mostly bankers in the room. And we actually had a conversation with some of the guys from this about the canal and about CK Hutchison and the company and things like that. These are Panamanian highest level bankers who sit in on some really important meetings. And they're saying they don't think the deal is completely off the table, that there is a lot more happening. It's not so simple as mainstream media is going to say, okay, this one in, okay, that one out, okay, this one back in. Like, there's a lot going on here with different parties, and it's not just one or the other. There are many interested parties in the entire process. So,
and either way, the headlines of this around this are always very deceptive, because they seem to act like whatever exchanges happen with the assets of these ports are who controls the canal. And either way, that's not really the case. We're just talking about certain ports within the canal, not the actual operation of the canal, which is controlled by Panama.
Correct.
All right, we're going to head over to our good friends in the United Kingdom. there are good friends, but sometimes you feel bad for what's happening to your friends. So in this case, there's been another bizarre attempt to tackle crime in England. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the knife crime in England. Of course, there's knife crime. There's guns are banned, knives are banned, yet there's still crime rampantly in England's major cities. I wonder why. So now the latest attempt, this is from Prime Minister Keir Starmer, I believe, is moving to ban zombie and ninja swords, claiming that it's about public safety. What do you think about this attempt to ban ninja swords? And I should say, this is not in correlation with any increase in ninja sword crime. It's just another way to try to pass a law to fight crime of some kind in the good old UK.
Well, it's funny on multiple levels here. It's funny because, first of all, it's just so ridiculous. Like, it's just so stupid and ridiculous. But then it's funny on a whole nother level because of how proud he was of it, how he's going all over social media and talking about it. And this is coming out. And he's like, he really thinks that this is a step forward, that this is actually going to help someone or reduce the crime. It's so ridiculous. And it just shows the disconnect that they have with reality is absolutely unbelievable. Now, instead of addressing the real issue, which is mental health. This is the real problem with all of this is mental health. They're blaming the tool or the instrument. And it's the exact same thing that we've seen in the United States with firearms. Instead of addressing, the public education and the alienation of children from the church and from their family and from themselves and everything that goes on with that, or the pharmaceutical industries, or the health industries, or the food pyramid. Like, I think, you know what? We could probably solve a lot of problems on planet Earth if it wasn't, wheat and carbohydrates and sugar making up the base of everything like that, and healthy fats at the, at the very, very top, this pyramid shape. That there's so much that can be solved with, proper sleep, nutrition, diet, healthy living, sunshine. Sunshine goes a very, very long way. If we look at COVID and everything they did, it was to lock you inside and keep you away from the sun. So let's deal with the underlying issues that affect mental health, opposed to banning ninja swords, which is not going to make anything. So you ban ninja swords. So what happens if there's an epidemic of pool cues, people running out there and hitting people over the head with pool cues? Should we ban billiards next? Like, the whole thing is absolutely absurd on every level.
I think I have the solution actually to knife crime in the United Kingdom. Allow open carry of handguns.
There you go. Exactly.
I don't think I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody. We have a lot of friends in the UK, but I don't think the UK people, the British people at large, would even want that. But that's my prescription. So, but I'm not really running for Prime Minister of the United Kingdom anytime soon.
No, I think the point should be, if they were having all of these types of crimes, then maybe focus on migration issues, focus on mental health, focus on lowering taxes and deregulation so that people can support each other, maybe support the family unit and having present fathers in place, and not both parents having to work two jobs, not giving over the child to state education at 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old. Like, maybe the child should stay at home a little bit longer. I think we could come up with a laundry list of things that would probably serve people better than putting your energy into banning ninja swords.
All right, Mikkel. Well, this next one, still talking about our friends over in Europe. This one could affect either you or I, actually, if we decide to take a trip to Europe sometime in the next year or two. But the ETIAS program, the electronic authorization program that the EU is going to roll in, it has been delayed. That's a good thing. It's been delayed till April 2027. I say it's a good thing on the surface. I don't know. Maybe it's delayed just to make it work better, to make it more invasive, to make it function better, which I don't really want it to do. But this is basically a full digital biometric system that's going to be put into place in the EU. And this is just one aspect of it, but it is going to be basically a special electronic visa that people from the United States, Canada, countries that typically are allowed basically to just waltz right into the EU will no longer have to. They'll first have to get this visa. Panama is on the list of countries as well. So if either you or I, once this is fully implemented, wants to visit the UK or anywhere else in the EU, we've got to go the full Monty and do this digital biometric electronic visa. So what do you think about all this?
Well, I'm a big fan of delays. Anything that the government is going to do that is going to be delayed, I'm all for delays. I mean, governments are stupid in inept. I mean, that's what it comes down to. They keep wanting to put in these horrible, horrible programs, which is some socialist globalists' wet dream. The only nice thing is, as I said, they're just so incompetent that they can't get them into place. I think this is the fifth or the sixth delay that we've seen in this program. We've been reporting on this for a couple of years now at expatmoney.com, and it keeps getting pushed back. So I'm hoping that 2026, 2027 comes along and it gets delayed again. Whenever I see a delay in this, I think about my very good friend, Paul Rosenberg. Paul Rosenberg is possibly the gentleman who actually inspired the creation of Bitcoin with his fictional writing. He's become a very good friend of mine over the years. And I remember having a private conversation with him one time, and he was saying, like, listen, we need to tell every IT person, every tech person, every coder and programmer that we know not to work for the government. Do not be working on CBDCs. Do not be working on ETAS and all of these types of things. Don't do this because you're building your own prison. So work on alternatives. Yes, they're going to pay you, larger salaries than you might get in other sectors, but don't accept it because you're building your own cage. And I think he's 100% right. I think he is so right on this. So every opportunity that I get, I'm encouraging people not to work for the government. Don't don't put your time and energy and effort into any of these types of programs. Or if you're currently working on any of these, go and quit. Go to the private sector, create and build something that's actually going to help humanity. Don't give in to these types of socialist programs. So will this come through in 2026, 2027? God, I hope not. But as long as we can keep delaying it and pushing it back, the better off we're going to be.
If we're lucky, this could be like the real ID in the U.S. This was first put into place in the during the Bush administration, where they required a real ID, a special digital ID for internal travel on planes in the U.S. This and many states didn't comply. Many states delayed. This was in the mid 2000s, and here we are in 2025, and it's set to go into effect in October. Who knows? Maybe it'll be delayed yet again. It's come up close to the deadline every time, and then they always end up delaying it for whatever reason. So I mean, we got 20 years out of pushing this real ID back, so maybe we can do the same for ETIS. I don't know how to say that.
Just drag your heels on all of it.
All right, we're going to stay in Europe here. We just can't seem to get enough of our friends over in Europe. But now Italy, and this is a very popular citizenship by descent program. Italy is actually cracking down and making stricter rules when it comes to their citizenship by descent program. They're introducing new generational limits, some stricter demands in terms of documents. They're also going to be a lot more sort of stringent on little things like missing apostilles and this sort of thing. So maybe you can speak to this. I know you've helped a lot of people with Italian citizenship because it is a pretty easy one if you can prove ancestry, or at least it used to be. So what do you think about these updates?
Yeah, this is a brand new one, and I'm really saddened to see this because not only like in general for humanity, because I think this was a very good option for a lot of people who wanted to get a second citizenship. I think the estimates are 80 million people that this is going to affect, that could have qualified for citizenship in Italy. But even just on a business level, or maybe not quite personal, but a business level for my clients, I have probably about 12 clients who are going through this process right now. And those who started a long time ago, a couple of years ago with me, it looks like they're going to be fine. But there was a few people that I've been working with who've been really dragging their heels on the whole thing. And, when we talked about dragging the heels with government. This is an instance where, don't drag your heels, where it's like, hey, something positive and that you have an opportunity to protect yourself, and people are not doing it. So it's a challenging one, but I had to write a couple of emails this week letting people know that chances are they will now not be able to get their citizenship in Italy because of these changes. So they basically got 60 days. Like, the things are in place now. They either need to make it law or reject it, but it looks like it is going through, and there's going to need to be a lot more substance in place to be able to get your Italian citizenship by ancestry. Luckily, there are still other programs in the world, maybe not from an ancestry point of view, but from a naturalization, from a citizenship by investment, from marriage, from birth tourism, from all of these types of things. Just means that we need to double down on the alternatives.
I think the broader lesson when it comes to dragging heels here across these couple stories, you want the government to drag their heels. You want them to drag their heels on every new thing they're going to do, every new regulation, whatever it may be. But you do not want to drag your own heels on any of this stuff, on taking action, on getting second passports, on getting residencies like this, because this is just another reason. Some people now are not going to get a very simple, what used to be a very simple, citizenship second passport, and they're just not going to be able to get it because they drag their heels.
Well, or another way of putting it is drag your heels on everything that the government wants you to do. And
Right.
anything the government does not want to do, then you should not drag your heels. Like
Right.
basically just don't do what they want. Don't comply. That's why I think agorism is such an interesting idea because actively working against these policies, um, there's a lot to be said for it, let's say.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we have to keep picking on our friends in Europe today. We have to move to an article reported on by our friends at IMI Daily. The European Parliament is advancing a proposal to revoke visa-free access to the Schengen zone, specifically for people from countries that offer citizenship by investment programs, and they're specifically targeting these Caribbean nations. I believe it's the 5 or so nations that offer these programs: it's St. Kitts, Antigua, Dominica, Grenada, and St. Lucia. So these are very popular programs. These Caribbean citizenships. They've recently aligned a lot of their programs and simplified a lot of their programs, but apparently the fine folks in the EU Parliament are not fans of this.
Well, this is another one we've been reporting on for years here. So, what ends up happening is Brussels sets out this criteria of another sovereign nation, what they have to do with their own legal system and their borders and how they should treat their citizens. And they threaten them. They outright threaten them. Do this, or we're going to take this away from you, or we're going to change this, or we're going to punish you. Okay. First of all, the hubris of it is just astounding. Um, and these are, once again, like democratically elected other like governments and sovereign nations and sit at the UN and like there's this it's so weird this type of the way that they treat other sovereign nations, even though like they want all the power for themselves, but then
Even
they
within their
give these.
own European Union, I mean, they don't limit it to countries outside of their purview at all.
I'm going to try to get through this one very calm because the whole thing I find very, very frustrating. So they make all these proposals. They say, you do this and you have a deadline or else. So they extort them, they blackmail them, they corral them and coercion through this process. And then as soon as the other country capitulates and moves forward with everything, they move the goalpost. And then they say, oh, well, now you need to do this. And then they do that. And then, oh, no, now you need to do this. And then they do it. And they just keep moving the goalpost over and over and over. And then they don't even have the honesty and the transparency to just give the real reasons why. They always come up with some absolutely bullshit excuse where it's like we're trying to protect our European borders, or it's the Russian threat, or it's this, or it's that, or it's terrorism, or any of these hot button words that they like to throw around. When in reality, it's that they hate you. That is really what it comes down to. They hate you and they don't want you to have any freedom. They think of statism as a religion, and as a religion, they don't like the idea of someone being able to buy it. They believe they're bureaucrats. This is socialism. This is central planning. They don't like wealthy entrepreneurs and investors to be able to buy their way into something sacred like statism.
They
And
don't
it's
like that
it,
some
it
guy can just show up in one of these Caribbean countries, toss out a couple $100,000, get a passport, and come and roam freely through their land that only they should really control.
exactly. And it has all these other connotations. And the main reason they will say is security. But if that was the case, why are they allowing so many illegal migrants into the country? Like, do you really, really think it's going to be some American or Canadian who has no criminal record, who has gone through extensive due diligence, KYC, know your customer, AML, all of these types of things, built up sizable wealth and made a donation to another country, a country that, by the way, generates a big portion of their income through non-tax dollars because the country needs the money because they're in the path of hurricanes and they get leveled every 3 to 4 years via a hurricane. So they use that money and they actually build infrastructure with it. Instead of going to the World Bank or the IMF or anything like that and taking loans, they generate non-tax dollars to be able to build the income, and they are able to sustain and protect their own people for that. And they sell the one of the only things that they can actually sell, which is their sovereign status to others. Now, everyone they're selling to are law-abiding citizens. They've never been convicted of a crime, nothing like this. And they're very choosy. I went through the process. I am a St. Kitts citizen. I donated it was probably close to $250,000 to go through the process for me. And I went through it. It was so much work. There was so much paperwork. You think like one random person like us versus hundreds of thousands or millions of illegal migrants crossing the border every year. We have no idea where they're coming from, who they are. There's no criminal record. There's nothing like that. If you were really worried about security, you would be securing your own borders. So it's a complete farce. It's absolutely nonsensical. It makes no logical sense or conclusion. They're just gaslighting you on every single level.
All right. Well, we got one more in the pile here. We're finally going to stop picking on the EU for just a moment, but well, not totally, because they are, of course, connected to this as well. Vanuatu, the small country of Vanuatu, they are now. You told me this headline isn't exactly accurate, so I'll let you correct it. But the headline is that Vanuatu has suspended their citizenship by investment program, citing the need for reforms after years of criticism about weak due diligence and global pressure from, here they are, from the EU. So I said we're not going to pick on them. That's actually not true. We have to continue picking on them. So by all means.
So Vanuatu is a small island nation off the coast of Australia, 1,000 or 2,000 kilometers off the coast of Australia. I went there, I want to say in 2008 or 2007 or something like that. This is another country that does not have a very large economy, where they're generating income by selling their passport, their sovereign status. They got accused multiple times of allowing criminals in. I don't think it was ever actually proved that there was any proof that they did allow criminals in. I don't think that was ever a case, but it was more that there could be. So future tense, there is a possibility that their due diligence process was not strong enough. Not, hey, this actually happened, but we don't think your system is good enough. Although, the bureaucrats who are doing this haven't been through the process. They actually have no idea what they're talking about once again. But my comment to you before on the program itself. So it's not that the citizenship by investment program has been canceled. It's that one of the methods of funding that citizenship by investment program has been canceled or suspended. So what it is they had a fund model that they were trying to put into place as an alternative to a donation. The donation option is still available. We're actually just started working on another case for Vanuatu, like on Monday of this week for my client. So the donation route is still active. It's $135,000 all in soup to nuts program for a single individual. If you're husband and wife, then it's $155,000. And with that, I can help secure a passport for you and call it, if everything goes well, maybe 100 days or less. So it's still a very, very good option that I'm actively helping people with. Actually, if you guys send an email to support@expatmoney.com, if you want more information, then we can point you in the right direction on how we can assist you with that. I still think it's a good program. The EU is beating them up in the mainstream media for everything that I already highlighted for the Caribbean countries. Exact same story, but this is a tax-free country at the bottom of the earth that has no aggression towards anyone else and has a passport that you can use to travel to, roughly 100 countries in the world. So a solid option, I would say.
Well, I mean, my intention was not to pick on our friends in Europe all day, but we're not picking on our friends in Europe. We're picking on the European politicians who are very, very worthy of being picked on. So that's the end of my stack today. It's been a blast, Mikkel, as always.
Pleasure's all mine. So everybody, if you guys want more information about what we're doing, if you want to follow along with the news stories as they come out, we're doing 3 articles a week on expatmoney.com. We're talking about all of these things in the newsletter. We've got EMS Pulse, which is our daily correspondence, which is coming Monday to Friday, let's call it. And then we've got the Expat Sunday Times, which is, surprise, surprise, on Sundays. You can sign up for both of those at expatmoney.com. That's where all the good stuff's coming out. You're going to get notified about all of the new news articles and stories and our take on it, as well as any of the programs and how we can help you secure your new life abroad. Go to expatmoney.com. Marc, thanks so much for your time, and I will talk to you probably in about 10 minutes on
Probably in
Telegram.
5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.